All right, we are coming up on 8 o'clock. So, let's settle in. Let's get comfortable, grab a drink and a chair, because we are going on a guided tour through hell tonight. Let's see what Virgil has in store for us this time. Welcome back. This is our second night reading from Dante's The Inferno. Dante's Inferno. The titles are very fluid, shall we say. Yeah, very appropriate for a Tuesday, particularly a Tuesday that follows a 3-day weekend for many of us. That Tuesday that is really a Monday but is still a Tuesday. You know what? It fits. It fits. Alright, so, last time, we saw the beginning and the first few circles of hell. And we saw the very interesting way that Dante's imaginations and musings and general just theory crafting of what hell could be like, what eternal torment might appear to be, was kind of just adopted into the consciousness of the Western Hemisphere. Maybe more. The source material got none of this. None of this. I think in the it's been a long time since I did any sort of biblical study, but I want to say it's pretty much just, Lake of Fire. Boom, done. Dante's a little bit more in detail. And generally, if you ask anyone what hell is like, chances are a fair few, those that don't say that it's imaginary, will say that it's got something like this. Maybe not hitting all of the salient points, but there's going to be elements pulled out. So, I think that's quite telling. Very telling, actually, considering the lasting impact Dante's work has had, and the incredible power that fiction can have. Where would we be without the power of imagination here put down to pen? Even from very, shall we say, pompous poets. Even the poets give something to society. Except Thoreau. All the poets and all the authors except Thoreau. Although I guess his contribution to society is my ever-burning hatred. Also appropriate, because we're about to read about hell. Hey, welcome in, Kessler. You caught us just at the start today. Alright. And we do also have the joy of mocking Thoreau. That is that. And he's also given us the running theme of Henry's generally being awful, but not only Henry's. If your name starts with an H, I'm going to give you a little bit of a side eye, just in case. So, there is that. He's contributed to the sophistication and elevation of name-based memes. I'll take it. I'll take it. Well done, Thoreau. Well done. We won't talk about Walden, but dagnabbit, it did it again, didn't it? Mix It Up just decides to work sometimes and not other times. It is a little frustrating. Let me see if I can give that a bit of a jostle. Overlay widgets, and toggle that off and on. Let's see what that does. Let's even give it a test. Nope, nothing doing. Why is it not going? Why? Oh, is it almost ready? Fantastic! I've been looking forward to that. Aha! Well, now I'm very excited, and I'll be more than happy to apply credit where it is due. Yeah, fantastic. Thank you very much again. All right. Let's see. Tell you what, let's just restart Mix It Up and see if that does the trick. There's definitely something to be said for the convenience that Stream Elements provided. Mix It Up is a better tool, but sometimes it just doesn't quite take. I think there's a sequence to what needs to boot up at what point to get things to appropriately pull into OBS. Alright, now let's see. We've got back to the overlay widgets. We'll hit that. We'll run a test here. And nada. Okay. What do we got? Position is right. Animation's right. Spots and such are right. Hit save again. Toggle off, toggle on. Make sure we've got the overlay URL properly set. Let's make sure it's here. Yep. 811 overlay. Yep. Looks good. Alright. Let's give it one more go. Alright, so on the overlay, I now see it in the test window, but it's not coming through into OBS now. Let's see. That and back. Let's give it one more test. Nope, it is not liking it whatsoever. Fantastic. Alright, we're gonna have to go back to the old one, I think. I do have them both. It is less fun, but we do what we have to do. I'll have to Google up and figure out why the hell this isn't working later. But for now, not a big problem. I wonder if I could set it, pull it just from local file. Yeah, it's just being temperamental. All right. Well, with that little bit of fun and adventure out of the way, let's go ahead and get back to our reading, because we've got, honestly, I don't know how much further we've got. If this is anything like Gilgamesh, we could be in for a surprise and it just randomly runs out of book. Or we could go for the full night. I really have no idea. I haven't looked ahead, and that's half the fun. No, I would not like to buy AI viewers. Thank you very much. Alright, so let's shift over into our reading nook And let's see. Well, of course, yes, I flipped over to the other overlay on the one screen, but not on the other. There we are. All right. So, let's resume tonight with the 10th canto of Dante's Inferno. I still cannot get over how much I love that this is a secondhand book scan PDF. It gives it so much character. We go by a secret path along the rim of the dark city. Between the wall and the torments, my master leads me, and I follow him. Supreme virtue, who through this impious land wheel me at will down these dark gyres, I said, speak to me, for I wish to understand. Tell me, master, is it permitted to see the souls within these tombs? The lids are raised, and no one stands on guard. And he to me, all shall be sealed forever. On the day these souls return here from Jehoshaphat, with the bodies they have given once to clay. In this dark corner of the morgue of wrath lie Epicurus and his followers, who make the soul share in the death's body. And here you shall be granted presently, not only your spoken wish, but that other as well, which you had thought perhaps to hide from me. And I, except to speak my thoughts in few and modest words, as I learned from your example, dear guide, I do not hide my heart from you. Oh, Tuscan, who go living through this place, speaking so decorously, may it please you pause a moment on your way, for by the grace of that high speech in which I hear your birth, I know you for a son of that noble city. Wait, oh, that's someone else. Okay. Good lord. Who is this? So, who do we? How are we gonna? Yeah. Oh, Tuscan, who go living through this place, speaking so decorously. May it please you pause a moment on your way, for by the grace of that high speech in which I hear your birth, I know you for a son of that noble city, which perhaps I vexed too much in my time on earth. These words broke without warning from inside one of the burning arcs. Caught by surprise, I turned in fear and drew close to my guide. And he... Turn around. What are you doing? Look here. It is Farinata rising from the flames. From the waist up, his shade will be made clear. My eyes were fixed on him already. Erect, he rose above the flame. Great chest, great brow, he seemed to hold all hell in disrespect. My guide's prompt hands urged me among the dim and smoking sepulchres to that great figure, and said to me, mind how you speak to him. And when I stood alone at the foot of the tomb, the great soul stared almost contemptuously before he asked, of what line do you come? Because I wished to obey, I did not hide anything from him. Whereupon, as he listened, he raised his brows a little, then replied, bitter enemies were they to me, to my fathers and to my party, so that twice I sent them scattering from high Italy. If they were scattered still from every part, they formed again and returned, both times, I answered. But yours have not yet wholly learned that art. At this, another shade rose gradually, visible to the chin. It had raised itself, I think, upon its knees, and it looked around me, as if it expected to find, through that black air that blew about me, another traveler, and, weeping, when it found no other there, turned back. And if, it cried. "You travel through this dungeon of the blind by power of genius. Where's my son? Why is he not with you?" And I to him, Not by myself am I born this terrible way. I am led by him who waits there, and whom, perhaps, your Guido held in scorn. For by his words and the manner of his torment, I knew his name already, and could therefore answer both what he asked and what he meant. Instantly, he rose to his full height. "He held? What did you say? Is he dead, then? Do his eyes no longer fill with that sweet light?" And when he saw that I delayed a bit in answering his question, he fell backwards into the flame, and rose no more from it. But that majestic spirit, at whose call I had first paused there, did not change expression, nor so much as turn his face to watch him fall. "And if," going on from his last words, he said, "men of my line have yet to learn that art that burns me deeper than this flaming bed. But the face of her who reigns in hell shall not be 50 times rekindled in its course before you learn what griefs attend that art. And as you hope to find the world again, tell me, why is that populace so savage in the edicts they pronounce against my strain?" And I to him, "The havoc and the carnage that dyed the Arbia red at Monteperte have caused these angry cries in our assemblage." He sighed and shook his head. "I was not alone in that affair," he said, "nor certainly would I have joined the rest without good reason. But I was alone at that time when every other consented to the death of Florence. I alone, with open face, defended her." So may your soul sometime have rest." I begged him, solve the riddle that pursues me through this dark place and leaves my mind perplexed. You seem to see in advance all time's intent, if I have heard and understood correctly, but you seem to lack all knowledge of the present." "We see a squint, like those whose twisted sight can make out only the far off," he said, "for the King of all still grants us that much light. When things draw near, or happen, we perceive nothing of them, except what others bring us. We have no news of those who are alive. So may you understand that all we know will be dead forever, from that day and hour when the portal of the future is swung to." Then, as if stricken by regret, I said, "Now, therefore, will you tell that fallen one who asked about his son that he is not dead, and that if I did not reply more quickly, it was because my mind was occupied with this confusion you have solved for me?" And now my guide was calling me. In haste, therefore, I begged that mighty shade to name the others who lay with him in that chest. And he, "More than 1,000 cram this tomb. The second son, Frederick, is here, and the Cardinal of the Ubaldini. Of the rest of us, let us be dumb." And he disappeared, without more said, and I turned back, and made my way to the ancient poet, pondering the words of the dark prophecy. He moved along, and then, when we had started, he turned and said to me, "What troubles you? Why do you look so vacant and downhearted?" And I told him, and he replied, "Well, may you bear those words in mind." Then, pausing, raised a finger. "Now, pay attention to what I tell you here. When, finally, you stand before the ray of that sweet lady whose bright eye sees all, from her you will learn the turnings of your way." So saying, he bore left, turning his back on the flaming walls, and we passed deeper yet into the city of pain, along a track that plunged down like a scar into a sink, which sickened us already with its stink. All right, that brings us to the end of the 10th canto. So that one was a little bit more Italian-specific, shall we say. More contemporary to Dante's time, and some recent history thereof. But it does give us a little bit of a peek into how the damned comport themselves. They retain some of their attitudes of life, but what they're aware of, what they see, is the past and the future, but as things near into the present, it blurs. Sort of like being nearsighted, and as things are I guess being farsighted, and then as things get too close, you can't see and can't really make it out anymore. That's sort of how the damned, at least in that circle, in the sixth circle, were seeing existence. All right, so continuing from the 11th canto, Circle 6, The Heretics. We came to the edge of an enormous sink rimmed by a circle of great broken boulders. Here we found ghastlier gangs, and here the stink thrown up by the abyss so overpowered us that we drew back, cowering behind the wall of one of the great tombs, and standing thus I saw an inscription in the stone, and read, I think Anastasius, once Pope, he whom Fontius led from the straight road. Before we travel on to that blind pit, we must delay until our sense grows used to its foul breath, and then we will not mind it. Oh. Thank you for telling me who is speaking after the quote. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Before we travel on to that blind pit, we must delay until our sense grows used to its foul breath, and then we will not mind it, my master said. And I then, let us find some compensation for the time of waiting. And he, you shall see, I have just that in mind. My son, he began, there are below this wall 3 smaller circles, each in its degree like those you are about to leave, and all are crammed with gods accursed, accordingly, that you may understand their sins at sight. I will explain how each is imprisoned and why. Malice is the sin most hated by God, and the aim of malice is to injure others, whether by fraud or violence. But since fraud is the vice of which man alone is capable, God loathes it most. Therefore, the fraudulent are placed below, and their torment is more painful. The first below are the violent, but as violence sins in 3 persons, so is that circle formed of 3 descending rounds of crueler torments. Against God, self, and neighbor is violence shown. Against their persons and their goods, I say, as you shall here set forth with open reason. Murder and mayhem are the violation of one person or another's of the person of one's neighbor and of his goods. Harassment, plunder, arson, and extortion. Therefore, homicides and those who strike in malice, destroyers and plunderers, all lie in that first round, and like suffers with like. A man may lay violent hands upon his own person and substance, so in that second round, eternally in vain repentance moan. The suicides, and all who gamble away and waste the good and substance of their lives, and weep in that sweet time when they should be gay. Violence may be offered the deity, and the heart that blasphemes and refuses him, and scorns the gifts of nature, her beauty and bounty. Therefore, the smallest round brands with its mark both Sodom and Cahor, and all who rail at God and his commands in their hearts dark. Fraud, which is a canker to every conscience, may be practiced by a man on those who trust him, and on those who have reposed no confidence. The latter of mode seems only to deny the bond of love, which all men have from nature. Therefore, within the second circle lie simoniacs, sycophants, and hypocrites, falsifiers, thieves, and sorcerers, grafters, pimps, and all such filthy cheats. The former mode of fraud not only denies the bond of nature, but the special trust added by bonds of friendship or blood ties. Hence, at the center point of all creation, in the smallest circle on which this is founded, the traitors lie in endless expiation.
Master, I said, the clarity of your mind impresses all you touch. I see quite clearly the orders of this dark pit of the blind. But tell me, those who lie in the swamp's bowels, those that the wind blows about, those the rain beats, and those who meet and clash with such mad howls, why are they not punished in the rust-red city if God's wrath be upon them? And if it is not, why must they grieve through all eternity?
And he, why does your understanding stray so far from its own habit? Or can it be your thoughts are turned along some other way? Have you forgotten that your ethics states the three main dispositions of the soul that lead to those offenses heaven hates: incontinence, malice, and bestiality, and how incontinence offends God least, and earns the least blame from justice and charity? Now, if you weigh this doctrine, and recall exactly who they are whose punishment lies in that upper hell outside the wall, you will understand at once why they are confined apart from these fierce wraiths, and why less anger beats down on them from the eternal mind. So, it says something that throughout this book, or throughout this poem, it's been Dante self-inserting so that the angels and historical figures that he likes can say, oh, how great you are. And then we get to here, and Virgil himself says, you're kind of dim, aren't you, son? That little bit of humility is just, it brings it all back down to earth. O sun, which clears all mists from troubles in sight, such joy attends your rising that I feel as grateful to the dark as to the light. Go back a little further, I said, to where you spoke of usury as an offense against God's goodness. How is that made clear? Philosophy makes plain by many reasons, he answered me, to those who heed her teachings, how all of nature, her laws, her fruits, her seasons, spring from the ultimate intellect and its art. And if you read your physics with due care, you will note, not many pages from the start, that art strives after her by imitation, as the disciple imitates the master. Art, as it were, is the grandchild of creation. By this, recalling the Old Testament near the beginning of Genesis, you will see that in the will of Providence, man was meant to labor and to prosper, but usurers
by seeking their increase in other ways, scorn nature in herself and her followers. But come, for it is my wish now to go on. The wheel turns, and the wane lies over Kauros. The fish are quivering low on the horizon. And there, beyond us, runs the road we go down the dark scarp into the depths below. A reminder, usury is charging interest on a loan. Generally, it's unnecessarily large or cruel interest, but in this period, Renaissance, thereabouts, generally, charging interest at all was seen. Charging interest to another Christian was seen as sinful at its height. Funny how things have come about. But that kind of brings back into a circle of how, like, if you remember, the stereotype of, like, the Jewish banker arose from that, actually, because it was usury to charge interest for a Jewish person to charge interest to another, or a Christian to charge interest to another. But by crossing that line, they kind of dodged the issue. And so that became the stereotype and really became ingrained, but also it's a way to sidestep the prohibition against charging interest. And economics kind of require interest and loans and things to function, at least on a modern scale. So, probably for the best, but there's been a lot of fallout from that little skirting of the rules for the last several centuries. Alright, so now we're looking at, they're breaking up how the different circles are set aside here. Yeah, we can go through this. So there's the lower hells, which is circle 6 and below, where they've got the different levels. I think it'll go into these. I'm not sure how much detail we'll see as we go further. But yeah, we see at the top the highest level of the circles. I guess level. So there's heresy at circle 6, and below it is circle 7. The violent and the bestial. The violence against neighbors. Violence against self below that, so even worse. And violence against God, art, and nature. I think he's added in at least art into one of those that, yeah. So it's interesting where the prohibition, or where the levels, the perspective is put in here. We see how he's decided that suicide's worse than murder. I'm not sure about that, but and then even worse than that is blasphemy? Perversion? Let's just say times have changed. But then we go down further into the 8th circle with the 8th and 9th. And that's where we get into usury and things like that, as we were mentioning. It actually goes pretty far down where that even shows up. But seducers and panderers, flatterers? Really? Yes men go into hell, straight down to the 8th circle. Okay. I'll let you go. You might be cooking there, Dante. Simoniacs, fortune tellers and diviners, grafters, hypocrites, then thieves, evil counselors. So if you know you're giving bad advice, but you're giving it anyway. Sowers of discord, counterfeiters and alchemists. Yeah, priorities were a little strange, shall we say. But then we go down further, then all the way down to the 9th circle. There's treachery against kin, and then treachery against country, which is worse than kin, apparently. And then treachery against guests and hosts. That seems fair.
The guest right was taken very seriously at the time. Very, very much ritual involved. And then treachery against lords and benefactors. Feudalism go hard, I guess. Alright, so let's continue now. Alright, now we're going to start getting some more detail in that. So we didn't really need to go through the outline, but I think it'll be good framing. Alright. The 12th Canto. Circle 7. Round 1. The Violent Against Neighbors. The scene that opened from the edge of the pit was mountainous, and such a desolation that every eye would shun the sight of it. A ruin, like the slides of Mark near Trent, on the bank of the Adige, the result of an earthquake, or of some massive fault in the escarpment. For, from the point on the peak where the mountains split to the plain below, the rock is so badly shattered, a man at the top might make a rough stare of it. Such was the passage down the steep, and there, at the very top, at the edge of the broken cleft, lay spread the infamy of Crete, the heir of bestiality, and the lecherous queen who hid in a wooden cow. And when he saw us, he gnawed his own flesh in a fit of spleen, and my master mocked. How do you pump your breath? Do you think, perhaps, it is the Duke of Athens who in the world above served up your death? Off with you, monster! This one does not come instructed by your master, but of himself to observe your punishment in the lost kingdom. As a bull that breaks its chains just when the knife has struck its death blow cannot stand nor run but leap from side to side with its last life, so danced the Minotaur, and my shrewd guide cried out, Run, now, while he is blind with rage! Into the pass, quick, and get over the side! So we went down, across the shale and slate of that ruined rock, which often slid and shifted under me at the touch of living weight. I moved on, deep in thought, and my guide to me. You are wondering, perhaps, about this ruin, which is guarded by that beast upon whose fury I played just now. I should tell you that when last I came this dark way to the depths of hell, this rock had not yet felt the ruinous blast. But certainly, if I am not mistaken, it was just before the coming of him who took the souls from limbo that all hell was shaken. So that I thought the universe felt love, and all its elements moved toward harmony, whereby the world of matter, as some believe, has often plunged to chaos. It was then that here and elsewhere in the pits of hell, the ancient rock was stricken and broke open. But turn your eyes to the valley. There we shall find the river of boiling blood, in which are steeped all who struck down their fellow men. Oh, blind, oh, ignorant, self-seeking cupidity, which spurs us so in the short mortal life and steeps us so through all eternity. I saw an arching fosse that was the bed of a winding river circling through the plain, exactly as my guide and lord had said. A file of centaurs galloped in the space between the bank and the cliff, well armed with arrows, riding as once on earth they rode to the chase. And seeing us descend, that straggling band halted, and 3 of them moved out toward us, their long bows and their shafts already in hand. And one of them cried out while still below, "To what pain are you sent down that dark coast? Answer, then! Answer from where you stand, or I draw the bow!" Chiron is standing there hard by your side. Our answer will be to him. This wrath of yours was always your own worst fate, my guide replied. And to me he said, that is Nessus, who died in the wood for insulting Deianira. At his death he plotted his revenge in his own blood. The one in the middle, staring at his chest, is the mighty Chiron, who nursed Achilles. The other is Pholus, fiercer than all the rest. They run by that stream in thousands, snapping their bows at any wraith who dares to raise himself out of the blood more than his guilt allows. We drew near those swift beasts. In a thoughtful pause, Chiron drew an arrow, and with its notch he pushed his great beard back along his jaws. And when he had thus uncovered the huge pouches of his lips, he said to his fellows, "Have you noticed how the one who walks behind moves what he touches? It is not how the dead go." My good guide, already standing by the monstrous breast in which the two mixed natures joined, replied, "It is true, he lives. In his necessity, I alone must lead him through this valley. Fate brings him here, not curiosity. From singing Alleluia, the sublime spirit who sends me came. He is no bandit, nor am I one who ever stooped to crime. But in the name of the power by which I go, this sunken way across the floor of hell, assign us one of your troop, whom we may follow, that he may guide us to the ford, and there carry us across on his back the one I lead, for he is not a spirit to move through air." Chiron turned his head on his right breast, and said to Nessus, "Go with them, and guard them, and turn back any others that would contest their passage." So we moved beside our guide, along the bank of the scalding purple river, in which the shrieking wraiths were boiled and died. Some stood up to their lashes in that torrent, and as we passed them, the huge centaur said, "These are the kings of bloodshed and despoilment. Here they pay for their ferocity. Here is Alexander and Dionysus, who brought long years of grief to Sicily. Dionysius. That brow you see with the hair as black as night is Attolino, and that behind him, the blonde, is Opito d'Esti, who had his mortal light blown out by his own stepson." I turned then to speak to the poet, but he raised a hand. "Let him be the teacher now, and I will listen." Further on, the centaur stopped beside a group of spirits steeped as far as the throat in the race of boiling blood, and there our guide pointed out a sinner who stood alone. "That one, before God's altar, pierced a heart still honored on the Thames." He passed on. We came in sight of some who were allowed to raise the head and all the chest from the river, and I recognized many there. Thus we followed along the stream of blood. Its level fell until it cooked no more than the feet of the damned, and here we crossed the ford to deeper hell. "Just as you see the boiling stream grow shallow along the side," the centaur said to us when we stood on the other bank, "I would have you know that on the other the bottom sinks anew, more and more, until it comes again full circle to the place where the tyrants stew. It is there that holy justice spends its wrath on Sextus and Pyrrhus through eternity, and on Attila, who was a scourge on earth, and everlastingly milks out the tears of Rigne de Corneto and Rigne Pazzo, those two assassins who for many years stopped the highways, bloody and abhorred." And with that, he started back across the ford. Many notes on who these people are, but yeah, there's even in the notes in the the scholarly follow-ups and footnotes. They're like, it's probably this sort of person, or probably, yeah. So, the gossip columns of the Times are a little less than accurate as we go further and further along through time. Alright, so let's continue now with the 13th canto, Circle 7, Round 2, The Violent Against Themselves. I'm feeling this is going to be where things get a little bit more contentious, because, I don't know about you, but generally, my view toward suicides is more sympathetic, a grief for the loss, rather than condemnation. This is a very Catholic viewpoint, and I'm not very Catholic at all. Nessus had not yet reached the other shore when we moved on into a pathless wood that twisted upward from hell's broken floor. Its foliage was not verdant, but nearly black. The unhealthy branches, gnarled and warped and tangled, bore poisoned thorns instead of fruit. The track of those wild beasts that shun the open spaces, men till between Cecina and Corneto, runs through no rougher nor more tangled places. Here nest the odious harpies, of whom my master wrote how they drove Aeneas and his companions from the Strophides with prophecies of disaster. Their wings are wide, their feet clawed, their huge bellies covered with feathers, their necks and faces human. They croak eternally in the unnatural trees. Before going on, I would have you understand, my guide began. We are in the second round, and shall be till we reach the burning sand. Therefore, look carefully, and you will see things in this wood which, if I told them to you, would shake the confidence you have placed in me. I heard cries of lamentation rise and spill over every hand, but saw no souls in pain in all that waste, and, puzzled, I stood still. I think perhaps he thought that I was thinking. Those cries rose from among the twisted roots, through which the spirits of the damned were slinking, to hide from us. Therefore my master said, if you break off a twig, what you will learn will drive what you are thinking from your head. Puzzled, I raised my hand a bit and slowly broke off a branchlet from an enormous thorn, and the great trunk of it cried, "Why do you break me?" And after blood had hardened all the bowl of the wound, it cried again, "Why do you tear me? Is there no pity left in any soul? Men we were, now we are changed to sticks. Well, might your hand have been more merciful when we were no more than souls of lice and ticks." As a green branch with one end all aflame will hiss and sputter sap out of the other as the air escapes. Sorry, Zoe distracted me. So from that trunk there came words and blood together, gout by gout. Startled, I dropped the branch that I was holding, and stood transfixed by fear, half turned about to my master, who replied, "O wounded soul, could he have been believed before what he had seen in my verses only, you would yet be whole. For his hand would never have been raised against you. But knowing this truth could never be believed till it was seen, I urged him on to do what grieves me now, and I begged to know your name, and to make you some amends in the sweet world when he returns, he may refresh your fame. And the trunk.
So sweet those words to me that I cannot be still. May it not annoy you if I seem somewhat lengthy in reply. I am he who held both keys to Frederick's heart, locking and unlocking with so deft a touch that scarce another soul had any part in his most secret thoughts. Through every strife I was so faithful to my glorious office that for it I gave up both sleep and life. That harlot, Envy, who on Caesar's face keeps fixed forever her adulterous stare, the common plague and vice of court and palace, inflamed all minds against me, though these so inflamed him, that all my happy honors were changed to mourning.
Oh, hey! Welcome, welcome, welcome! Raiders, Witsy, thanks for joining us. We are reading Dante's Inferno tonight. And we actually, since we've got some friends coming in, I'll go ahead and snooze our ads for a moment. We're going to the classics tonight. Right now we are, which circle of hell are we having our guided tour through tonight? Right now we're up to Circle 7, the second round, the Forest of Suicides. So yeah, if you guys are new here, or those of you who have not been here before, welcome, welcome, welcome. I am Arthur Irving Rush. We read around here. That's really all we do. Yeah, we read. Classics during the week, and we read a little bit more modern things on Saturdays. So our current unarchived series that we're reading on those Saturdays is The Shining. So we've got a little bit of something for everyone around here, hopefully. Get yourself learned some with the classics, the old books, and just sit back, empty head, and enjoy some good reading. Yeah, we also yap. I'm rather easily distracted when people get to be chatty, which is fine. Welcome and encouraged. I'll try to stay on task sometimes. Maybe. Very, very valid. Just yapping, you know what? It's a skill. It's a skill to be able to yap and yap and yap and yap and yap, especially one-sidedly. When you don't have anything to really go off of, that's when it really shines through that you're a good yapper. So, hats off. If I had a hat. I should commission a hat. I'll be honest, before I started streaming, I could go days without saying a word. So my yapping skills had gotten a little bit rusty. We're getting back into it. We're starting to get things going again. But it's one of those, it's a little bit harder to pick it back up where it left off than, say, riding a bicycle. A skill you need to practice and perfect as you get going. So, much respect to those who are professional yappers. All right, let's go ahead and get back into our reading. I do want to try and get through this chapter before ads come back through, and I've already burned one of our delays, one of our snoozes. So let's see what further horrors we have in store for us in hell. Oh, you know what? Before we do that, I do need to see if I can do a shout out here. I don't get a whole lot of raiders around here, as you might understand. So let's see if I get that right. Hey, there we go. Yes, so if you are not already, check out Witsy. She's great. She and a few others do Fanfic Friday readings. In addition to, as she had said, playing games and I'm sorry if I'm getting pronouns wrong, she, they, person, Witsy, is fantastic. A lot of fun. And if you haven't already, maybe pop over and give him a follow. Alright, so back to Inferno. Let's see.
That harlot, Envy, who on Caesar's face keeps fixed forever her adulterous stare, the common plague and voiced vice of court and palace, inflamed all minds against me. These inflamed so inflamed him that all my happy honours were changed to mourning. Then, unjustly blamed, my soul in scorn, and thinking to be free of scorn in death, made me at last, though unjust myself. By the new roots of this tree, I swear to you that never in word or spirit did I break faith to my lord and emperor, who was so worthy of honour in his merit. If either of you return to the world, speak for me, to vindicate in the memory of men one who lies prostrate from the blows of envy.
The poet stood, then turned. Since he is silent, he said to me, do not you waste this hour, if you wish to ask about his life or torment. And I replied,
question him, for my part. On whatever you think, I would do well to hear. I could not, such compassion chokes my heart.
The poet began again, that this man may with all his heart do for you what your words entreat him to. Imprisoned spirit, I pray, tell us how the soul is bound and bent into these knots, and whether any ever frees itself from such imprisonment. At that, the trunk blew powerfully, and then the winds became a voice that spoke these words.
Briefly is the answer given. When out of the flesh from which it tore itself the violent spirit comes to punishment, Minos assigns it to the seventh shelf. It falls into the wood, and landing there, wherever fortune flings it, it strikes root, and there it sprouts, lusty as any tear, shoots up a sapling and becomes a tree. The harpies, feeding on its leaves, then give it pain, and pain's outlet simultaneously. Like the rest, we shall go for our husks on Judgment Day, but not that we may wear them, for it is not just that a man be given what he throws away. Here shall we drag them, and in this mournful glade our bodies will dangle to the end of time, each on the thorns of its tormented shade.
We waited by the trunk, but it said no more, and waiting, we were startled by a noise that grew through all the wood, just such a roar and trembling as one feels when the boar and chase approach his stand, the beasts and branches crashing and clashing in the heat of the fierce race, and there, on the left, running so violently that it broke off every twig in the dark wood, two torn and naked wraiths went plunging by me. Their leader cried,
Come now, O Death, come now!
And the other, seeing that he was outrun, cried out,
Your legs were not so ready, Lano, in the jousts at the Topo.
And suddenly, in his rush, perhaps because his breath was failing him, he hid himself inside a thorny bush, and cowered among its leaves. Then, at his back, the wood leaped with black bitches swift as greyhounds escaping from their leash, and all the pack sprang on him. With their fangs they opened him and tore him savagely, and they withdrew, carrying his body with them limb by limb. Then, taking me by the hand across the wood, my master led me toward the bush, lamenting. All its fractures blew out words and blood.
Oh, Giacomo de Sant'Andrea, it said, what have you gained in making me your screen? What part had I in the foul life you led?
And when my master had drawn up to it, he said, Who were you, who through all your wounds blow out your blood with your lament, sad spirit? And he to us,
You have come to see how the outrageous mangling of these hounds has torn my boughs and stripped my leaves from me. Oh, heap them round my ruin. I was born in the city that tore down Mars and raised the Baptist. On that account, the god of war has sworn her sorrow shall not end. And were it not that something of his image still survives on the bridge across the Arno, some have thought Those citizens who of their love and pain afterwards rebuilt it from the ashes left by Attila would have worked in vain. I am one who has no tale to tell. I made myself a gibbet of my own lintel.
All right, that brings us to the end of the 13th canto. And so, our next chapter, our next section, is going to be over the third round of the 7th circle of hell, the violent against God, nature, and art. And while we're speaking of violence against God, nature, and art, we have an ad break coming up. I couldn't think of any better timing, honestly. So let's go ahead, take a few moments, stand up, stretch our legs, top up our drinks. We'll be back in just a little while so we can continue with Dante's Inferno. All right, we are back. Welcome back, everybody. I do need to make a bit of an adjustment here. Given that we had a couple minutes, I was able to make an adjustment of my own, but sadly, mourn with me, friends. We've reached the end of the bottle of the Sazerac Rye. It was a good bottle, and we'll have this last 2 fingers together just to enjoy it and see it on its way. It really is. A good rye is hard to come by, and honestly, for the one I found it for a song and a steal, so I'm genuinely going to look into grabbing another bottle of this one, but it doesn't make it hurt any less to be done with it. Alright, so Simba's gotten down from the cat tree and joined us on the desk, so hello, Mr. Man. Alright, let's go ahead and jump back in now that we are done with our ads for the next hour. It should get us through most of the evening. For those of you who are new here, I'm pretty strict on myself about making sure that when ads run, I always take a break. I really think that no one should be forced to pay in order to see all the stream, and since what we're doing is reading, the 2 options really are yap through the ads or take a break through the ads, and I figure it's just easier to take a break. So, that's that. And I do see the One True Panzer. Thank you very much for following. I can only assume you came in with Witsy. Thank you for following. I hope you enjoy your stay and enjoy your place in our small and growing community. So, let's go ahead and get started. Well, back to where we were with Dante's Inferno, the 14th canto, Circle 7, Round 3. The violent against God, nature, and art. Love of that land that was our common source moved me to tears. I gathered up the leaves and gave them back. He was already hoarse. We came to the edge of the forest where one goes from the 2nd round to the 3rd, and there we saw what fearful arts the hand of justice knows. To make these new things wholly clear, I say, we came to a plain whose soil repels all roots. The wood of misery rings it the same way. The wood itself is ringed by the red fosse. We paused at its edge. The ground was burning sand. Just such a waste as Cato marched across. O endless wrath of God, how utterly thou shouldst become a terror to all men who read the frightful truths revealed to me. Enormous herds of naked souls I saw, lamenting till their eyes were burned of tears. They seemed condemned by an unequal law. Some were stretched supine upon the ground, some squatted with their arms about themselves, and others without pause roamed round and round. Most numerous were those that roamed the plain, far fewer were the souls stretched on the sand, but moved to louder cries by greater pain. And over all that sand on which they lay, or crouched, or roamed, great flakes of flame fell slowly, as snow falls in the Alps on a windless day. Like those Alexander met in the hot regions of India, flames raining from the sky to fall still unextinguished on his legions. Whereat he formed his ranks, and at their head set the example, trampling the hot ground for fear the tongues of fire might join and spread. Just so in hell descended the long rain upon the damned, kindling the sand like tinder under a flint and steel, doubling the pain. In a never-ending fit upon those sands, the arms of the damned twitched all about their bodies, now here, now there, brushing away the brands.
"Poet," I said, "master of every dread we have encountered other than those fiends who sallied from the last gate of the dead, who is that wraith who lies along the rim and sets his face against the fire in scorn, so that the rain seems not to mellow him?"
And he himself, hearing what I had said to my guide and lord concerning him, replied,
"What I was living, the same I am now dead. Though Jupiter wear out his sooty smith, from whom on my last day he snatched in anger the jagged thunderbolt he pierced me with, though he wear out the others one by one who labour at the forge at Mongibello, crying again, 'Help, help, help me, good Vulcan,' as he did at Phlegra, and hurled down endlessly with all the power of heaven in his arm, small satisfaction would he win from me."
At this my guide spoke with such vehemence as I had not heard from him in all of hell. "Oh, Capaneus, by your insolence, you are made to suffer as much fire inside as falls upon you. Only your own rage could be fit torment for your sullen pride." Then he turned to me more gently. "That," he said, "was one of the 7 who laid siege to Thebes. Living, he scorned God, and among the dead, he scorns him yet. He thinks he may detest God's power too easily, but as I told him, his slobber is a fit badge for his breast. Now, follow me, and mind for your own good, you do not step upon the burning sand. But keep well back, along the edge of the wood." We walked in silence, then till we reached a rill that gushes from the wood. It ran so red the memory sends a shudder through me still. As for the Bluesky springs, the stream, the sinful women keep to their own use. So down the sand the rill flowed out in steam. The bed and both its banks were petrified, as were its margins. Thus I knew at once our passage through the sand lay by its side. "Among all other wonders I have shown you, since we came through the gate denied to none, nothing your eyes have seen is equal to the marvel of the rill by which we stand, for it stifles all the flames above its course, as it flows out across the burning sand." So spoke my guide across the flickering light, and I begged him to bestow on me the food for which he had given me the appetite. "In the middle of the sea, and gone to waste, there lies a country known as Crete," he said, "under whose king the ancient world was chased. Once Rhea chose it as the secret crypt and cradle of her son, and better to hide him, her Corybantes raised a din when he wept. An ancient giant stands in the mountain's core. He keeps his shoulder turned toward Damietta, and looks toward Rome as if it were his mirror. His head is made of gold, silverwork his breast, and both his arms of polished brass. The rest of his great torso to the fork. He is of chosen iron from there down, except that his right foot is terracotta. It is this foot he rests more weight upon. Every part except the gold is split by a great fissure from which endless tears drip down and hollow out the mountain's pit. Their course sinks to this pit from stone to stone, becoming Acheron, Phlegethon, and Styx. Then, by this narrow sluice, they hurtle down to the end of all descent, and disappear into Cocytus. You shall see what sink that is with your own eyes. I pass it in silence here." And I to him,
But if these waters flow from the world above, why is this rill met only along this shelf?
and he to me, you know the place is round, and though you have come deep into the valley through the many circles, always bearing left along the steep, you have not traveled any circle through its total round. Hence, when new things appear from time to time, that should hardly surprise you. And I,
Where shall we find Phlegethon's course? And less. One you omit, and of the other, you only say that Tearflood is its source.
in all you ask of me, you please me truly, he answered. But the red and boiling water should answer the first question you put to me, and you shall stand by lathe, but far hence, there, where the spirits go to wash themselves when their guilt has been removed by penitence. And then he said, Now it is time to quit this edge of shade. Follow close after me, along the rill, and do not stray from it. For the unburning margins form a lane, and by them we may cross the burning plain. All right, that brings us to the end of the 14th canto. We're starting to see things coming together. This bit was a little bit less about the individual suffering of the damned in that circle of hell, and more just descriptions of around them and hell overall. So, kind of glazing over the whole blasphemy bit. There's the one guy that was mentioned and called out, but even that was a little underwhelming. After all the terrors of the forest of suicides, this was a little less gripping, shall we say. So, let's continue with the 15th canto. Circle 7, Round 3, The Violent Against Nature. So we're splitting this one up into multiples. We're getting much more detailed as we go further along. We go by one of the stone margins now, and the steam of the rivulet makes a shade above it, guarding the stream and banks from the flaming snow. As the Flemings, in the lowland between Bruges and Wissant, under constant threat of the sea, erect their great dikes to hold back the deluge. As the Paduans, along the shores of the Brent, build levees to protect their towns and castles, lest Chiarantana drown in the spring torrent. To the same plan, though not so wide nor high, did the engineer, whoever he may have been, design the margin we were crossing by. Already, we were so far from the wood that even had I turned to look at it, I could not have made it out from where I stood. When a company of shades came into sight, walking beside the bank, they stared at us, as men at evening by the new moon's light stare at one another when they pass by on a dark road, pointing their eyebrows toward us as an old tailor squints at his needle's eye. Stared at so closely by that ghostly crew, I was recognized by one who seized the hem of my skirt and said, "Wonder of wonders, you?" And I, when he stretched out his arm to me, searched his baked features closely, till at last I traced his image from my memory. In spite of the burnt crust and bending near to put my face closer to his, at last I answered,
"Sir Brunetto, are you here?" "Oh, my son, may it not displease you," he cried, "if Brunetto Latino leave his company, and turn and walk a little by your side?"
And I to him,
"With all my soul I ask it. Well, let us sit together. if it please him, who is my guide and leads me through this pit." "My son," he said, "whoever of this train pauses a moment must lie 100 years forbidden."
"Oh, that's Virgil." "My son," he said, "whoever of this train pauses a moment must lie 100 years forbidden to brush off the burning rain. Therefore..." "Oh, no, we're him. Okay." The travesty of old poetry. Dialogue is difficult to identify speakers.
"Therefore, go on. I will walk at your hand, and then rejoin my company, which goes mourning eternal loss in eternal flame."
I did not dare descend to his own level, but kept my head inclined, as one who walks in reverence, meditating good and evil.
What brings you here before your own last day? What fortune or what destiny?"
he began.
"And who is he that leads you in this dark way?" "Up there, in the valley, in happy life, I went astray in a valley," I replied, "before I had reached the fullness of my years. Only yesterday at dawn I turned from it. This spirit showed himself to me as I was turning back, and guides me home again, along this road."
And he,
"Follow your star, for if in all of the sweet life I saw one truth shine clearly, you cannot miss your glorious arrival. And had I lived to do what I meant to do, I would have cheered and seconded your work, observing heaven so well disposed toward you. But that ungrateful and malignant stock that came down from Fiesole of old, and still smacks of the mountain and the rock, for your good works will be your enemy. And there is cause. The sweet fig is not meant to bear its fruit beside the bitter sorb tree, and even the old adage calls them blind, and envious, proud, and avaricious people. See that you root their customs from your mind. It is written in your stars, and will come to pass, that your honors shall make both sides hunger for you, that the goat shall never reap to crop that grass. Let the beasts of Fiesole devour their get like sows, but never let them touch the plant if among their rankness any springs up yet, in which is born again the holy seed of the Romans, who remained among their rabble when Florence made a new nest for their greed." "Had I all my wish," I answered then, "you would not yet be banished from the world in which you were a radiance among men. But that sweet image, gentle and paternal, you were to me in the world when hour by hour you taught me how man makes himself eternal, lives in my mind, and now strikes to my heart. While I live, the gratitude I owe it will speak to men out of my life and art. What you have told me of my course I write, by another text I save to show a lady who will judge these matters, if I reach her height. This much I would have you know, so long I say as nothing in my conscience troubles me. I am prepared for fortune, come what may. Twice already in this eternal shade I have heard this prophecy, but let fortune turn her wheel as she please, and the countryman his spade."
My guiding spirit paused at my last word, and, turning right about, stood eye to eye, to say to me, "Well heeded is well heard." But I did not reply to him, going on with Sir Brunetto to ask him who was with him in the hot sands, the best born and best known. And he to me,
"Of some who share this walk, it is good to know. Of the rest, let us say nothing, for the time would be too short for so much talk. In brief, we all were clerks, and men of worth, great men of letters, scholars of renown, all by the one same crime defiled on earth. Grecian moves there along the wearisome, sad way, and Francesco de Corso, and also there, if you had any longing for such scum, you might have seen that one of the servant of servants, sent from the Arno to the Baciglione, where he left his natural organ wrapped in cerements. I would say more, but there across the sand a new smoke rises, and new people come, and I must run to be with my own band. Remember my treasure, in which I shall live on. I ask no more."
He turned then, and he seemed, across that plain, like one of those who run for the green cloth at Verona, and of those more like the one who wins than those who lose. So, this one, a note. This is a rather important note. This whole section was relevant or related to the sodomites, that is to say, the homosexuals. So, again, we're reminded that times fucking change. Like, now, for fuck's sake, you don't get to hell just for that. You gotta earn your way into hell, not just for being who you are. Christ almighty. Alright, let's continue. We've got about, well, a little bit more than half an hour yet, and we can get probably another 2 or 3 chapters in at this rate. So, Canto 16, Circle 7, Round 3, The Violent Against Nature and Art. If we're getting into the violent, those who sinned against art, where is Henry David Thoreau? Where is he? I know he hasn't been alive yet when Dante wrote this, but we know he's here. We know it. Yeah, exactly. Having absolutely nothing to do with why Sodom was destroyed. That is why it's like, that is the association that's been made. Like, what? Language is dumb sometimes. Yeah, where's every tech bro? Every tech bro belongs in this specific circle. Violence against art. We could already hear the rumbling drive of the waterfall, and its plunge to the next circle, a murmur like the throbbing of a hive. When 3 shades turned together on the plain, breaking toward us from a company that went its way to torture in that rain. They cried with one voice as they ran toward me. Wait, for by your dress you seem a voyager from our own tainted country. Ah, what wounds I saw, what wounds I saw, some new, some old, branded upon their bodies. Even now, the pain of it in memory turns me cold. My teacher heard their cries and, turning to, stood face to face. Do as they ask, he said, for these are souls to whom respect is due. And were it not for the darting flames that hem our narrow passage in, I should have said it were more fitting you ran after them. We paused, and they began their ancient wail over again, and when they stood below us, they formed themselves into a moving wheel, as naked and anointed champions do in feeling out their grasp and their advantage before they close in for the thrust or blow. So circling, each one stared up at my height, and as their feet moved left around the circle, their necks kept turning backward to the right. If the misery of this place, and our unkempt and scorched appearance, one of them began, brings us and what we pray into contempt, still may our earthly fame move you to tell who and what you are, who so securely set your live feet to the dead dust of hell. This peeled and naked soul who runs before me around this wheel was higher than you think there in the world, in honor and degree. Guido Guerra was the name he bore, the good Goldrada's grandson. In his life he won great fame in council and in war. The other, who behind me treads this sand, was Teggiaio Aldobrandi. Okay, my Italian is showing through. Some names I do fine with. This is my own personal hell. Whose good counsels the world would have done well to understand. And I, who share their torment in my life, was Jacopo Restitucci,
Above all, I owe my sorrows to a savage wife.
I would have thrown myself to the plain below, had I been sheltered from the falling fire, and I think my teacher would have let me go. But seeing I should be burned and cooked, my fear overcame the first impulse of my heart to leap down and embrace them, then and there.
Not contempt, I said, but the compassion that seizes on my soul and memory at the thought of you tormented in this fashion. It was grief that choked my speech.
It was grief that choked...
Well, he's still talking. Okay. It was grief that choked my speech when through the scorching air of this pit my lord announced to me that such men as you might be approaching. I am of your own land, and I have always heard with affection and rehearsed with honor your name and the good deeds of your happier days. Led by my guide and his truth, I leave the Gaul and go for the sweet apples of delight. But first, I must descend to the center of all. So may your soul and body long continue together on the ways you go, he answered, and the honor of your days shine after you. Tell me, if courtesy and valor raise their banners in our city as of old, or has the glory faded from its days? For Borsiere, who is newly come among us, and yonder goes with our companions in pain, taunts us with such reports, and his words have stung us. Oh, Florence, your sudden wealth and your upstart rabble, dissolute and overweening, already set you weeping in your heart, I cried with face upraised, and on the sand, those three sad spirits looked at one another, like men who hear the truth and understand. If this be your manner of speaking, and if you can satisfy others with such ease and grace, they said as one, we hail a happy man. Therefore, if you win through this gloomy pass, and climb again to see the heaven of stars, when it rejoices you to say, I was, speak of us to the living.
They parted then, breaking their turning wheel, and as they vanished over the plain, their legs seemed wings. Amen could not have been pronounced between their start and their disappearance over the rim of sand. And then it pleased my master to depart. A little way beyond, we felt the quiver and roar of the cascade, so close that speech would have been drowned in thunder, as that river, the first one on the left of the Apennines, to have a path of its own from Monteveso to the Adriatic Sea, which, as it twines, is called the Acquacheta from its source until it nears the Forlì, and then is known as the Montone in its further course, resounds from the mountain in a single leap there above San Benedetto dell'Alpe, where 1,000 falls might fit into the steep. So down from a sheer bank, in one enormous plunge, the tainted water roared so loud a little longer there would have deafened us. I had a cord bound round me, like a belt, which I had once thought I might put to use to snare the leopard with the gaudy pelt, when, at my guide's command, I had unbound its loops from my habit. I gathered it and held it out to him, all coiled and wound. He bent far back to his right, and, throwing it out from the edge, sent it in a long arc into the bottomless darkness of the pit. Now, surely some unusual event, I said to myself, must follow this new signal upon which my good guide is so intent. Oh, how cautiously a man should breathe near those who see not only what we do, but have the sense which reads the mind beneath. He said to me, You will soon see arise what I await, and what you wonder at. Soon you will see the thing before your eyes. To the truth, which will seem falsehood. Every man who would not be called a liar while speaking fact should learn to seal his lips as best he can. But here I cannot be still. Reader, I swear by the lines of my comedy, so may it live, that I saw swimming up through that foul air a shape to astonish the most doughty soul, a shape like one returning through the sea, from working loose an anchor run afoul of something on the bottom. So it rose, its arms spread upward and its feet drawn close. So that brings us to the end of the 16th canto. And yes, this one, let it be known, is entirely a torture of my own choosing. Usually, for those of you who are not from here all the time, usually it's Akimos' suggestions for what we read that torture and torment me. I guess I can't really say usually anymore. It's about 50-50 by now. I inflict my own pains upon me plenty of times. But pretty regularly, Akimos picks something that is decidedly French or something of the sort, and I'm sure it's to torment me. Because he and I both know I can't pronounce French at all. At all. At all! I'm American to a fault. And as such, my accents and pronunciations are limited to neutral, as such, a bad Southern, which is very bad, but at least it's understandable. And what you've heard so far. Painful European accents, whether it be poorly pronounced French, Spanish, or Italian, as the case may be. But if we must be honest, half the fun of streaming and watching streamers is bullying said streamer, and from the streamer's perspective, forcing you to listen to my crimes against linguistics. So, who's really winning here? I thought so. I thought so. Alright, let's go ahead and keep going. We've got a fair bit of time yet, and we're making good progress. I think we're actually, just judging by the percent, we're about halfway through. This is a little bit longer than I expected, if I'm being entirely honest. I was halfway expecting... Indeed. I was halfway expecting this to be like when we read Gilgamesh, and it just randomly ends after the third hour or so. But we've got more ahead of us, it seems. Alright. Canto 17. Circle 7, Round 3. The Violent Against Art. Garion. Now, see the sharp-tailed beast that mounts the brink. He passes mountains, breaks through walls and weapons. Behold the beast that makes the whole world stink. These were the words my master spoke to me, then signaled the weird beast to come to ground, close to the sheer end of our rocky levee. This, the filthy prototype of fraud, drew near. Prototype of fraud? ChatGPT? And settled his head upon the breast of the edge of the dark cliff, but let his tail hang clear. His face was innocent of every guile, benign and just in feature and expression, and under it his body was half reptile. His two great paws were hairy to the armpits. All his back and breast and both his flanks were figured with bright knots and subtle circlets. Never was such a tapestry bloom woven on earth by Tartar or by Turk, nor by Arachne at her flowering loom. As a fairy sometimes lies along the strand, part beached and part afloat, And as the beaver up yonder in the guzzling German's land squats halfway up the bank when a fight is on, just so lay that most ravenous of beasts, on the rim which bounds the burning sand with stone. His tail twitched in the void beyond that lip, thrashing and twisting up the envenomed fork which, like a scorpion's stinger, armed the tip. My guide said, "It is time now we drew near that monster." And descending on the right, we moved 10 paces outward to be clear of sand and flames. And when we were beside him, I saw upon the sand a bit beyond us some people crouching close beside the brim. The master paused. "That you may take with you the full experience of this round," he said, "go now and see the last state of that crew. But let your talk be brief, and I will stay and reason with this beast till you return, that his strong back may serve us on our way." So further yet, along the outer edge, on the 7th circle, I moved on alone, and came to the sad people of the ledge. Their eyes burst with their grief, their smoking hands jerked about their bodies, warding off now the flames and now the burning sands. Dogs in summer bit by fleas and gadflies, jerking their snouts about, twitching their paws, now here, now there, behave no otherwise. I examined several faces there among that sooty throng, and I saw none I knew. I observed that from each neck there hung an enormous purse, each marked with its own beast and its own colors like a coat of arms. On these their streaming eyes appeared to feast. Looking about, I saw one purse display azure on, or kind of lion, another, on a blood-red field, a goose, whiter than whey, and one that bore a huge and swollen sow, azure, on field argent, said to me,
"What are you doing in this pit of sorrow? Leave us alone! Since you have not yet died, all of you know my neighbor, Vitaliano, has a place reserved for him here at my side."
"A Paduan?
A Paduan among the Florentines I sit here, while hour by hour they nearly deafen me, shouting, 'Send us the sovereign cavalier with the purse of the 3 goats!'"
He half arose, twisted his mouth, and darted out his tongue, for all the world like an ox licking its nose. And I, afraid that any longer stay would anger him who had warned me to be brief, left those exhausted souls without delay. Returned, I found my guide already mounted upon the rump of that monstrosity. He said to me, "Now must you be undaunted. This beast must be our stairway to the pit. Mount it in front, and I will ride between you and the tail, lest you be poisoned by it." Like one so close to the quaternary chill that his nails are already pale and his flesh trembles at the very sight or shade or cool rill, so did I tremble at each frightful word. But his scolding filled me with that shame that makes the servant brave in the presence of his lord. I mounted the great shoulders of that freak and tried to say, "Now help me to hold on," but my voice clicked in my throat and I could not speak. But no sooner had I settled where he placed me than he, my stay, my comfort, and my courage in my other perils, gathered and embraced me. Then he called out, "Now, Geryon, we are ready. Bear well in mind that his is living weight, and make your circles wide and your flight steady. As a small ship slides from beaching or its pier backward, as a small ship slides from a beaching or its pier backward, so that monster slipped back from the rim. And when he had drawn clear, he swung about, and stretching out his tail, he worked it like an eel. and with his paws he gathered in the air, while I turned pale. I think there was no greater fear the day Phaeton let loose the reins and burned the sky. There's some of the voices get a little wheezy, so I get that. I think there was no greater fear the day Phaeton let loose the reins and burned the sky, along the great scar of the Milky Way, nor when Icarus, too close to the sun's track, felt the wax melt, unfeathering his loins, and heard his father cry, "Turn back! Turn back!" than I felt when I found myself in air, aloft, in space with nothing visible but the enormous beast that bore me there.
Oh, hey, thank you very much for the follow. Your blend is mine. I assume I said that right.
I hope you enjoy your stay, and enjoy our occasional, well, somewhat regular adventures through literature. Slowly, slowly, he swims on through space, wheels and descends. But I can sense it only by the way the wind blows upward past my face. Already on the right I heard the swell and thunder of the whirlpool. Looking down, I leaned my head out and stared into hell. I trembled again at the prospect of dismounting and cowered in on myself, for I saw fires on every hand, and I heard a long lamenting. Then I saw. Till then I but felt it, the course of our down spiral to the horrors that rose to us from all sides of the pit. As a flight-worn falcon sinks down warily, though neither bird nor lure has signaled it. The falconer crying out, "Wah! Spent already!" Then turns, and in 100 spinning gyres sulks from her master's call, sullen and proud, so that the bottom lit by endless fires, the monstrous Geryon circled and fell, setting us down at the foot of the precipice of ragged rock on the 8th shelf of hell. And once freed of our weight, he shot from there into the dark, like an arrow into air. All right. Oh, here we are again. I guess let me get this flipped so we can get a good look at this. But that brings us to the end of the 7th circle of hell. And with that, we can get a look at what we have coming before us. So the great waterfall from the 7th, down, 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 until the shelf of rock at the 8th circle. And there's quite a lot going on here in the 8th circle of hell, all the way down to the 9th. So there's a lot yet ahead of us. And it's a little hard to read these, but it's just very small is what it is. But you can kind of see what's going on there. Let me get Simba out of the way, actually. So, kind of have a bit of a preview of what's to come. Let's see, it is about 10 till. So let's go ahead and make sure that we can get one more chapter, one more canto in tonight. So let's undo that transform, relock that, and move forward. So, the 18th canto, Circle 8, Malbolge, Bolgia 1 and Bolgia 2, the fraudulent and malicious, the panderers and seducers, and the flatterers. There is in hell a vast and sloping ground called Malbolge, a lost place of stone as black as the great cliff that seals it round. Precisely in the center of that space, there yawns a well extremely wide and deep. I shall discuss it in its proper place. The border that remains between the well pit and the great cliff forms an enormous circle, and 10 descending troughs are cut in it, offering a general prospect, like the ground that lies around one of those ancient castles, whose walls are girded many times around by concentric moats. And just as, from the portal, the castle's bridges run from moat to the last bank, so, from the great rock wall, across the embankments and the ditches, high and narrow cliffs run to the central well, which cuts and gathers them like radii. Here, shaken from the back of Geryon, we found ourselves. My guide kept to the left, and I walked after him, so we moved on. Below, on my right, and filling the first ditch along both banks, new souls in pain appeared, new torments, and new devils black as pitch. All of these sinners were naked on our side of the middle. They walked toward us, on the other, in our direction, but with swifter stride. Just so the Romans, because of the great throng in the year of the Jubilee, divide the bridge in order that the crowds may pass along, so that all face the castle as they go, on one side toward St. Peter's, while on the other all move along facing Mount Giordano. And everywhere along that hideous track I saw horned demons with enormous lashes move through those souls, scourging them on the back. Ah! How the stragglers of that long route stirred their legs' quick march at the first crack of the lash! Certainly, no one waited for a second or a third. As we went on, one face in that procession caught my eye, and I said, "That sinner there, it is certainly not the first time I've seen that one." I stopped, therefore, to study him, and my guide, out of his kindness, waited, and even allowed me to walk back a few steps at the sinner's side. And that flayed spirit, seeing me turn around, thought to hide his face, but I called to him, "You there, that walk along with your eyes on the ground! If those are not false features, then I know you as Venedicio Caccianemico of Bologna. What brings you here among this pretty crew?" And he replied, "I speak unwillingly, but something in your living voice, in which I hear the world again, stirs and compels me. It was I who brought the fair Giselle around to serve the will and lust of the Marquis, however sordid that old tale may sound. There are many more from Bologna who weep away eternity in this ditch. We feel it so that there are not as many tongues that are taught to say Sipa in all the land that lies between the Reno and the Saveno, as you must know from the many tales of our avarice and spleen." And as he spoke, one of those lashes fell across his back, and a demon cried, "Move on, you pip! There are no women here to sell!" Turning away then, I rejoined my guide. We came in a few steps to a raised bridge that made a passage to the other side. This we climbed easily, and, turning right along the ragged crest, we left behind the eternal circling of those souls in flight. And when we reached the part at which the stone was tunneled for the passage of the scourged, my guide said, "Stop a minute and look down on these other misbegotten wraiths of sin. You have not seen their faces, for they moved in the same direction we were headed in." So from that bridge we looked down on the throng that hurried toward us on the other side. Here, too, the whiplash hurried them along, and the good master, studying that train, said, "Look, there, at that great soul that approaches, and seems to shed no tears for all his pain. What kingliness moves with him even in hell? It is Jason, who by courage and good advice made off with the Colchian ram. Later it fell that he passed Lemnos, where the women of wrath, enraged by Venus's curse, then drove their lovers out of their arms, put all their males to death. There, with his honeyed tongue and his dishonest lover's wiles, he gulled Hypsipyle, who in the slaughter had gulled all the rest. And there he left her, pregnant and forsaken. Such guilt condemns him to such punishment. And also, for Medea, his vengeance taken. All seducers march here to the whip, and let us say no more about this valley, and those it closes in its stony grip. We had already come to where the walk crosses the second bank, and from which it lifts another arch, spanning from rock to rock. Here we heard people whine in the next chasm, and knock and thump themselves with open palms, and blubber through their snouts as if in spasm. Steaming from that pit, a vapor rose over the banks, crusting with a slime that sickened my eyes and hammered at my nose. That chasm sinks so deep, we could not sight its bottom anywhere until we climbed along the rock arch to its greatest height. Once there, I peered down, and I saw long lines of people in a river of excrement that seemed to overflow, the overflow of the world's latrines. I saw, among the felons of that pit, one wraith who might or might not have been tonsured. One could not tell, he was so smeared with shit. He bellowed,
"You there? What are you staring at me more than all the others in this stew?"
I said to him,
"Because, if memory serves me, I knew you when your hair was dry. You are Alicio Interminelli, de Lucia. That's why I picked you from this filthy fry."
And he then, beating himself on his clown's head,
"Down to this of the flatteries I sold the living sunk me here among the dead."
And my guide prompted then, "Lean forward a bit, and look beyond him there. Do you see that one, scratching herself with dungy nails? The strumpet, who fidgets to her feet, then to a crouch. It is the whore Thais, who sold her lover when he sent to ask her, 'Do you thank me much?' Much? Nay, past all believing. And with this, let us turn from the sight of this abyss." All right, that brings us to the end of the 18th canto, and that'll be where we finish up for tonight. So let's go ahead and set a bookmark here. We'll pick up next time from the 19th canto, the third Bolgia, with the Simoniacs. But, so we're starting to get into, as we're getting deeper and deeper into hell, we're starting to see a little bit more of Dante's own prejudices coming out. His own ideas of where certain sinners belong and where the punishments are most dire. Things this far down, maybe, to most, would be, not quite as bad as murder, but the punishment is a little bit flipped. There's like 2 circles back that murderers and thieves were and such, and now we're down to flatterers. Okay, I see how it goes. So yeah, we're starting to get into the part where Dante's own perceptions are coming out. It is the nature of poets to have themselves in their art. Alright guys, let's go ahead and wrap up here for tonight. And yeah, sounds like Dante's mad because he got no game. If he had to go visit those pimps that are in the circle, and maybe he's just resentful that his hard-earned money is no more. So, all right, as always, I prefer to raid over to fellow readers. Let me hit a snooze here because we're not going to run ads again while we're doing that. But I prefer to find other readers out on Twitch and participate in the Twitch dynamic. So let me have a quick look and see if there's anybody else that is out there reading tonight. Tuesdays are kind of funny. Oh, actually, I need to refresh because I think I'm getting an old list. All right, here we are. Let's see. We've been hit or miss on Tuesdays, so we'll see if there's anyone else that we can run over to. Okay, someone is just getting started with reading Aragon. It's been a good number of years since I read that. Let's see. A lot of writers. Jev is reading tonight. If we want to hang out with our Kiwi great aunt. Which actually I think we might be past due for going back to her. Somebody's, it's a rerun. I prefer to have live readings. Okay, yeah, let's go ahead and raid over to Jev and Z tonight. Those of you who are not familiar with her, she is an incredibly wholesome, everyone's favorite aunt, who reads similar to we do, and generally is just a fantastic lady. So I hope you will give her your very best. So, as always, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us tonight. If you're new here, we'll have some reintroductions here. I always stream both on YouTube and Twitch. All of our VODs are always going to be available on YouTube. So if you'd like to have some background noise or like to catch up with us, feel free to give us a subscription to the channel over there and maybe a like on the stream. It convinces the algorithm to send new friends our way and generally just is a good vibe. Over on Twitch, we're just relatively fresh here. We started back in the end of January, and we're growing our community together, and we're making some decent progress. I think as of today, we're very near the same amount of followers on Twitch as we have subscribers on YouTube, so that's exciting. And if you haven't yet, a follow is fantastic on Twitch. Don't need to bother with a sub or anything if you don't feel like it. We've got plenty of time to just enjoy ourselves. Do try and do my best to make sure that ads don't get in the way of the books. So you shouldn't need to subscribe. All right. Our next reading will be on Friday at 8 Eastern, where we will continue with Dante's Inferno. Our schedule is reasonably firm, so if you ever care to find out what we're going to be doing next, you can just check out the Twitch channel, and the calendar there is reasonably accurate. All right. As always, thank you everyone so very much for joining us. I hope you've enjoyed your visit here, and until next time, have a wonderful evening. We'll be sending you over to Jev and Z tonight, who is reading The Rover Boys Are Back. That may just be the theme that she's reading. Anyway, she's a fantastic lady, so give her our very best. Until next time, goodbye and good night.
Thank you for the raid. It's lovely to have you